Greetings in the name of Christ, friends, on this beautiful Thursday morning, May 28th, when we are continuing this week a theme of Thy Will Be Done, based on an experience I had over the weekend of seeing those words on a gravestone right underneath the name of the beloveds, and it sparked a bit of curiosity in me about how do we do God's will? How do we discern God's will? And so I pulled this beautiful book that I used years ago, To Will God's Will, Beginning the Journey, by Ben Campbell Johnson, who is a beloved professor at Columbia Presbyterian Seminary years ago and worked in the area of church revitalization and evangelism. So yesterday, we ended with this question: where has God been at work in the events of your life and the story you tell yourself? Because Ben Campbell Johnson likens this Christian life to a journey, and he wants us to think about the parts of our lives as they unfold, and to see how God is at work in those parts of our lives. So I'm continuing that conversation. For a healthy spirituality, you must also recognize that beyond this deep, mysterious self, you are a person who has been shaped by a community, beginning with your father and mother and extending to those relatives and friends with whom you shared life. The way you perceive reality was given to you in your earliest relationships in your society of origin. In that community, you received your primal images of God. You received an image of yourself. And, quite unconsciously, you adopted goals for your life. Your part in the drama of your life, written by those societal directors, you have played out again and again on the stage of history. In that community, you were given a language and the special shades of meaning for your vocabulary. With these tools, you question and construct your reality by narrating the significant experiences of your life. You also have the power to transcend the present in the direction of the future. You can imagine a different future. You are not bound by your past experiences, or by your genetic inheritances, or by the language and values you have received. You can change. For example, when Cindy was talking with me about her mistrust of God, I asked, do you think that your mistrust of God has any relation to your father's betrayal of you and your mistrust of him? She had already thought of the question, but didn't have an answer. Each of us has the capacity to recall the past, examine it, make new decisions about both our pains and joys, and weave these new meanings into our lives. I emphasize this possibility because the review of your life may have turned up old experiences that need reinterpretation. Though this task may be painful, it is a necessary one. The review of human personality I've been describing has several implications for the spiritual journey. First, it suggests that the journey should be taken with seriousness. After all, we make this journey only one time. This view also describes us as persons who have the qualities for spiritual experience: memory, imagination, and intuition. Since persons are created in communities, they require communities in which to grow and develop their spiritual lives. This understanding of human nature makes an encounter with God plausible, if not essential. Now, back to my conversation with Cindy, Ben Campbell Johnson writes, the conversation I read about yesterday. She clearly indicated to me that she had problems with believing all the things her church required her to believe about Jesus Christ. She also had some questions about the nature of God. At one point, I spoke frankly to her. Cindy, I believe I can see the work of God in your life. I don't mean to impose on your experience a God interpretation, but I really think I see in your life story the evidence of the presence of God. You talk about being near to God in church, feeling God's presence after you have run, thinking that God may be present to you in your customers, and even making an effort to surrender your life to God. I think even your struggle with what you call your rational mind is indicative of God's presence in your life. I would like you to be able to identify the presence of God in your experience, and I have a suggestion that I think will help. What's that? She said. In the Christian tradition, we say that God is like Jesus. Begin with this affirmation and read the Gospel of Mark. As you read this one description of Jesus, ask only one question of the text. If God is like Jesus, what is God's nature? I explained to her that Mark did not begin his report with the story of the virgin birth, but focused immediately on the ministry of Jesus. She said, I'll do it. I'll read Mark to see what I can discover about God. I do not know what Cindy discovered about God as she read the Gospel of Mark. My present concern is what you can discover about God. Your image of God has importance equal to or greater than your perception of yourself. Self and God are the major components of the spiritual journey. If you are still at that stage of your life where you question the actuality of God, assume the possibility that God is, and that you wish to discover what God is like. The Bible never seeks to prove the existence of God. All our efforts to prove this supreme reality will go unrewarded. For the sake of your investigation, assume that God is, and that God's character is reflected in Jesus of Nazareth. The long tradition of the Christian church stands behind the affirmation. It is not within our power to find God. It is not in us to call God down from heaven. If we make the assumption that Jesus has come to show us God, we will first off find that we are the recipients of a gracious gift. Truly, I believe that. So I invite you to take some time today, or maybe tomorrow, whatever works for you, to read the Gospel of Mark, to ask that question. If God is like Jesus, what is the nature of God? I know a couple of people, Jane and Amy, who are sisters, who are reading the Gospels and are Zoom calling each other to discuss what they read. And they are reading it in the Message. What a beautiful way to explore your spiritual journey. So let us continue this theme of Thy Will Be Done by praying the prayer that Jesus taught us to pray with that line in it. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. After you read the Gospel of Mark, if you're interested in letting me know what you found out about the nature of God in Jesus Christ, I'd love to hear from you.